Kublai Khan ruled the largest land empire history had ever produced, stretching from Korea to the edge of Europe. In 1274, he sent a fleet across the sea to add one more country to it, Japan. Standing in his way was a young man not yet 24 years old. His name was Hojo Tokimune, the regent of a small island shogunate with no navy to speak of. Kublai Khan asked him to submit. Twice Tokimune refused, and had the great Khan's own envoys executed rather than answer them. Twice invasion fleets crossed the sea to conquer Japan. Twice they failed. History remembers this as a miracle. The truth is more interesting than that. To understand why a young man was making decisions that could end his country, go back to the world Tokimune was born into. He was born in 1251, the son of the fifth Hojo regent, into a family that had ruled Japan in all but name for over a generation. The emperor still sat in Kyoto. Real power belonged to the shogunate in Kamakura, and within it to the Hojo clan. Tokimune inherited that power early. His father died when he was a boy, and by 18 he held the office of shikken, regent to the shogun, Japan's most powerful position, though he was not formally invested until 1268, the same year Kublai Khan's first letter arrived. The Mongol Empire by then had already conquered most of Asia. Korea had submitted. China was falling. Kublai Khan's letter to Japan was polite on its surface and unmistakable underneath. Submit as a tributary state or face war. Tokimune's government sent no answer at all. Kublai Khan sent 5 more letters over the next 6 years, each ignored or refused. To the shogunate, submission meant the end of Japan as an independent nation, and Tokimune chose confrontation with the largest empire on earth instead. In November 1274, the threat became real. A combined Mongol, Chinese, and Korean fleet of several hundred ships landed at Hakata Bay on the northern coast of Kyushu. The invaders brought weapons Japan had never faced: disciplined mass infantry formations, powerful composite bows, and a weapon called tetsuhao, iron or ceramic shells packed with gunpowder, launched from catapult-like devices to explode among the defenders. Not firearms, nothing like them existed anywhere yet. But a shell that exploded on a battlefield was something no samurai had ever encountered. The Japanese defenders, organized under Tokimune's regional commanders, fought a style of war built around individual mounted archers, men who rode out, announced their names, and dueled one at a time. Against a coordinated foreign army, that style cost them dearly in the first hours. And yet they did not break. Through a single brutal day of fighting along the beaches and shallows of Hakata Bay, Japanese warriors adapted, held their ground, and inflicted serious losses on the invaders. The fighting was close and undecided when night fell. That night, Mongol commanders withdrew their troops to the ships to regroup, and a storm struck the fleet at anchor. Ships were wrecked, thousands of soldiers drowned, and the survivors sailed home. For 7 centuries, that storm has been remembered as the reason Japan won. What is less often told is that Japanese defenders had already made the invaders pay in blood before the weather turned against them. Tokimune understood something most victorious leaders forget. Winning once does not mean the war is over. He was right. Kublai Khan sent another embassy in 1275, again demanding submission. Tokimune had the envoys taken to Kamakura and executed, a genuine documented break from diplomatic norms, an unmistakable message. There would be no negotiation. Then he prepared for a second invasion he had no way of knowing the size of. Along the coast of Hakata Bay, over the next several years, Tokimune's government built a massive defensive wall, stone-faced earthworks running for miles along the shoreline, raised by conscripted labor from across Kyushu, designed to stop an invading army from ever seizing a beachhead the way it had in 1274. Parts of that wall, the Genko Borui, still stand today. Alongside the wall, Tokimune reorganized the shogunate's coastal defenses and authorized limited offensive raids against Mongol-held Korea, striking before the enemy could land rather than only waiting to receive them. he also leaned on something less tangible, his practice of Zen Buddhism, studying for years under the Chinese monk Mugaku Sogen, later known by his posthumous name Buko Kokushi, who had fled to Japan from the fighting in China. Tokimune is traditionally said to have drawn composure from that practice through the years after 1274, when a second invasion was certain and only its timing was unknown. For 6 years, Japan waited and built, not knowing exactly when the fleet would return, only that it would. In the summer of 1281, the Second Fleet arrived, and this time the scale was staggering. 2 separate invasion forces, one sailing from Korea and a much larger one from southern China, converging on Kyushu with a combined force historians estimate in the tens of thousands, carried by more than 4,000 ships. It was, by some estimates, the largest seaborne invasion force the world had yet seen. This time, Hakata Bay was ready. The Genko-Borui Wall denied the invaders the open beachhead they had used in 1274, forcing them to fight from cramped, exposed positions or hold offshore. For nearly 2 months, Japanese defenders launched small boats at night to raid the anchored fleet, harassing the Mongol forces in brutal, grinding skirmishes that gave them no room to land their full army and organize. The fighting did not end quickly or easily. Japanese losses were real. But by early autumn, after weeks denied the decisive foothold their invasion depended on, the Mongol fleet was still off the coast, unable to break through, exactly the prolonged stalemate that history tends to skip past on the way to the storm. Then, in mid-August, a massive typhoon struck the anchored fleet. The destruction was almost total. Chroniclers and later archaeological surveys of wrecks near Takashima both point to catastrophe. Thousands of ships destroyed, tens of thousands of soldiers drowned or stranded and hunted down on the beaches afterward. What remained of Kublai Khan's second invasion force limped home, and he never sent a third. Tokimune did not have long to enjoy the victory. He continued to govern in the years after 1281, founding Engakuji, a Zen temple in Kamakura, in 1282, built, according to its own founding records, to honor the dead of both invasions, Japanese and Mongol alike, without distinction. It still stands today. He died in 1284, at 33 years old, of illness, worn down after roughly a decade, governing under the constant expectation of annihilation. He did not live to see old age. The strain of those years appears to have consumed him. The storms of 1274 and 1281 were real. Meteorological and archaeological evidence supports both as genuine typhoons, not later invention. But the storms did not fight alone. In both invasions, Japanese defenders held the line, absorbed the first shock of a foreign way of war, built a wall that changed the outcome of the second campaign, and made the Mongol army pay for every mile of coastline before the weather turned in their favor. Later generations simplified that into a single word: kamikaze, the divine wind, a story of heaven itself protecting Japan. It is a clean story. It is not quite the whole one. That word had a strange second life. Nearly 7 centuries later, in the final year of the Second World War, the Japanese military revived it to name pilots ordered to crash their aircraft into enemy ships. The word survived Tokimune by 660 years and came to mean something he never intended. The regent who said no to the largest empire on earth is remembered today mostly for 2 storms he never commanded. What the record actually shows is a young man who held a coastline for 6 years, built a wall while the world assumed he was only waiting, and bought his country just enough time for the weather to matter. If this story was worth your time, subscribe. Forgotten Japan tells the stories that the famous tales of samurai and shoguns leave out.